The winter wind moved through the tall pines outside Linda's small Montana home, carrying a cold quiet that wrapped around the evening like an old blanket. The house looked peaceful from the outside, glowing with warm yellow light, but inside, Linda carried a heaviness she never talked about. Her son, Andrew, had been away in the military for years, and every night felt a little heavier than the one before. She had learned how to live with the silence, though it never felt natural on this particular evening. She tried to distract herself with simple tasks. She brewed tea, straightened the living room, and checked the clock again and again even though she knew she had nowhere to be. It was a habit she could not break. Ever since Andrew left for basic training, every tick of the clock reminded her of how quickly time moved and how slowly it returned what she loved. She walked to the window and looked outside at the empty road, remembering the nights when Andrew would rush into the house as a teenager, laughing about something small, asking what was for dinner, asking for advice, or simply sitting near her while doing nothing at all. Those moments felt close and far at the same time, like memories stored behind glass, safely kept but unreachable. The kettle whistled, and she poured the tea into her favorite mug, the one Andrew had given her before he left. It had a small crack on the handle, but she never replaced it. She carried it to the couch, sat gently, and took a long slow breath. Then her phone buzzed. She looked at it with the same small hope she always carried. But this time her breath caught when she saw his name on the screen. Andrew calling. The world around her seemed to pause. She answered quickly, trying to sound calm. "Hi, sweetheart." His voice reached her through the static, softer than she remembered. "Mom," he said, and something in the way he said her name made her sit straighter. She knew her son's voice better than she knew her own heartbeat, and this one carried a weight she hadn't heard before. "Are you okay?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. He breathed in slowly like he was gathering courage. "I need something from you," he finally said. Linda felt her chest tighten, not from fear but from the strange vulnerability in his voice. Andrew had always been strong, confident, and composed. Ever since he joined the military, he spoke with clarity, discipline, and steadiness, but right now he sounded different. He sounded lost. "What is it, Andrew?" she asked gently. "You can tell me anything." He hesitated again. She could hear movement on his end of the call, footsteps maybe, or the rustle of a jacket. Then he spoke, his voice low, almost breaking. "I just want you to fulfill my desires, the ones I can't talk about with anyone else." Linda blinked, unsure if she heard him right. The phrasing was confusing, but his tone was not. He wasn't talking about anything inappropriate or strange. She could hear the emotion behind the words, the exhaustion, the longing, the fear he didn't know how to name. Her heart began to race. "We'll talk when you're ready," she whispered, trying not to let her worry show. He didn't explain more. He simply said, "I'll come home soon." Then the call ended, leaving her alone with the quiet again. Only this time the silence felt heavier. She placed her phone on the table and sat still, listening to the faint hum of the heater and the distant sound of wind outside. The words he used replayed in her mind again and again. His desires, what desires? She knew her son. She knew what he wasn't saying. He was tired. He was hurting. He was asking for help in a way that didn't expose his pain. Soldiers learn to carry everything alone, and sometimes that weight twisted their words. She closed her eyes and leaned back against the couch, letting herself feel the mix of fear and hope building inside her. That night, she barely slept. Every sound outside felt louder. Every shadow on the wall felt deeper, and every moment stretched on forever. She tried to tell herself that he was safe, that he would come home, that everything would make sense when she saw him. But part of her knew that people changed out there in ways only a mother could see. The next morning, she prepared the house as if someone important was visiting. She cleaned every corner, wiped every surface, cooked meals he used to love, and opened the curtains wide so the sunlight filled the rooms. She wanted the house to feel like home. For him, not because she needed perfection, but because she needed hope. Every hour felt like waiting for a storm to arrive, the type that didn't destroy things but revealed them. She checked her phone often, hoping for updates, text messages, anything to hold on to, but Andrew stayed silent. Later that day, she sat on her porch with a blanket around her shoulders, watching the mountains in the distance. The sky looked heavy with snow, and she felt it in her bones. The weight of unspoken truths. The stories Andrew carried but never shared. She remembered the day he enlisted, how proud he looked in his uniform, how determined he had been to make something of himself, and she remembered the long hug they shared, the way she held him tightly, afraid to let go. Now he wanted her to fulfill his desires. But what did that truly mean? Did he want comfort? Did he want guidance? Did he want forgiveness? Did he want the safety of being cared for again? The more she thought, the clearer it became. Soldiers didn't ask for emotional help easily, so when they did, it meant something inside them was breaking. As the day faded, and the first snowflakes touched the porch railing, Linda whispered to herself, "Come home, Andrew." She didn't know what story he carried or what pain lived behind his eyes, but she knew this: whatever his desires were, they came from a place of deep human need, not romance, not confusion, but longing for connection, longing for home. The house waited quietly with her, every room holding its breath, every moment stretching toward the future she hoped would bring answers. Whatever Andrew was carrying, he had chosen to share it with her, and a mother's heart always knew how to prepare for her child's truth. Whether it arrived with a whisper, a confession, or a trembling voice on a phone call, she would be ready. And in that quiet house in Montana, the story between a mother and her military son was just beginning. A story filled with healing, hidden fears, and the simple but powerful desire to feel human again. When Andrew finally returned home, the air around him seemed to shift the moment he stepped into the house. He had always been strong, tall, and confident, the kind of man who walked with purpose, but now his movements were slower, heavier, as if every step carried the memory of places he didn't want to remember. The Montana wind pushed against the door behind him, but he stood in the entryway without speaking, his eyes scanning the familiar walls as if he wasn't sure he belonged there anymore. Linda hurried toward him, her heart both relieved and afraid. She wanted to hug him the way she used to, but something in his expression made her stop. His eyes held a tiredness she had never seen, a quiet storm that told 1,000 stories he hadn't shared. "You look cold," she said softly. He nodded, dropped his duffel bag by the door, and walked toward the living room. His boots echoed across the wooden floor, a sound that felt both comforting and heartbreaking. He sat on the couch, leaned forward, and rested his elbows on his knees. He didn't take off his jacket. He didn't remove his gloves. He sat as if he wasn't sure how to begin. Linda sat beside him but left enough space so he wouldn't feel crowded. She watched him carefully, noticing how his hands trembled even though he tried to hide it. "Andrew," she whispered, "talk to me." He breathed out slowly, the kind of breath someone releases after carrying too much for too long. "I can't sleep," he said quietly. She waited, knowing he needed to speak in his own time. "The nights overseas," he said, stopping as if the memories reached out and pulled him back. "They were loud even when everything was quiet." He rubbed his face with both hands. "I got used to staying awake, thinking something might happen." Linda could hear the pain layered in his voice, something deeper than fear, something shaped by loneliness and nights where the world felt too big and too cold. He continued, "When I came home I thought the silence would help me rest." He shook his head. "But the silence makes everything louder." Linda placed her hand gently on his arm. "You're home now," she said. "You're safe." Andrew closed his eyes. "I know," he whispered, "but my mind doesn't." He leaned back and stared at the ceiling, and Linda saw the boy he used to be hidden inside the man he had become, the boy who once asked for her help with his homework, who used to tell her about his dreams, who trusted her with every piece of his heart. Now he sat in front of her trying to survive his own memories. "I want the simple things again," he said suddenly, his voice cracking. "I want a night without fear. I want a place where I don't have to pretend I'm strong. I want someone to listen without judging me." He ran his hands through his hair. "I want to feel human, Mom." Linda swallowed, her throat tightening. She had waited years for him to open up, and now she understood what he meant on the phone when he said he wanted her to fulfill his desires. He desired peace, he desired comfort, he desired connection, he desired pieces of his old life, the ones that made him feel grounded and alive. She moved a little closer. "You don't have to pretend with me," she said. "Not ever." Andrew looked at her for the first time since he arrived, truly looked at her, and she saw emotion swirling behind his eyes: guilt, exhaustion, relief, confusion, and a quiet longing for something he had lost along the way. "I kept everything inside for so long," he said. "I didn't want to worry you." She shook her head gently. "You're my son. I worry because I love you, not because you're weak." He stared down at his hands. "Sometimes I forget how to feel," he said. "Everything becomes numb." Linda understood more than he expected. "When life hurts too much, our hearts shut down to protect us," she said softly. "But shutting down doesn't make the pain disappear. It just hides it." Andrew took a deep breath. "I didn't expect this," he admitted. "Coming home and feeling lost?" She nodded slowly. "Being strong doesn't mean you have to carry everything alone." He looked past her toward the fireplace, the warm glow reflecting off his eyes. "I saw things," he said quietly. Things I can't unsee, people I can't forget, silence I can't escape. He pressed his hand against his forehead. I don't know how to talk about it. Linda didn't push him. She simply placed her hand on his back and rubbed gently, the same way she did when he was small and couldn't sleep after a nightmare. He didn't pull away. He leaned into her touch as if it grounded him. Minutes passed in silence, but this time the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt like a space where healing could begin. Finally, Andrew whispered, I want to come back to who I was. Linda's voice softened even more. That person is still inside you. He looked at her with tired eyes. I don't know if I believe that. She held his hand, firm but gentle. Then believe in me, she said. I'll help you find him again. His shoulders trembled, the weight he carried showing itself in small, vulnerable ways. He didn't cry out loud, but Linda saw the tears he tried to blink away. She didn't mention them. She simply squeezed his hand, giving him a moment to breathe without judgment. After a while, Andrew finally spoke again, his voice steady but fragile. When I said I needed you to fulfill my desires? He paused, swallowing hard. I meant I want to feel safe, I want to feel understood, I want someone who doesn't look at me like I'm broken. Linda felt her heart warm and ache at the same time. You're not broken, she said firmly. You're healing. He nodded slowly, absorbing her words. I came home because I needed you, he admitted. I needed someone who remembers the parts of me I can't find right now. She brushed a strand of hair from his forehead. You'll find them, she whispered. And when you can't, I'll help you. Andrew leaned back on the couch, letting his body relax for the first time since he arrived. His breath softened. The tension in his shoulders eased slightly. For a moment, he closed his eyes and let the warmth of the room settle around him like a quiet embrace. Linda watched him with a mixture of pride and sorrow. Pride for the man he had become, sorrow for the battles he fought inside himself. She knew this moment was only the beginning. Healing didn't happen in a day, but it began with honesty, and Andrew had finally taken the first step. As the fire crackled and the snow continued falling outside, Linda knew the hardest part was yet to come. Andrew had opened the door to his pain, but he hadn't walked through it yet, and deep inside her heart, she felt a quiet fear. What else was he hiding? What story was he still afraid to share? The weight he carried was heavy, and she sensed there was more, much more. The next morning arrived with pale sunlight spreading through the curtains, touching the living room where Andrew had fallen asleep on the couch. His breathing was deep, steady, and peaceful for the first time since he came home. Linda stood quietly near the doorway, watching him with a soft ache in her chest. She didn't want to wake him, because she knew how rare rest had become for him. When he finally opened his eyes, confusion crossed his face, as if he wasn't sure where he was. But when he saw her smile, something softened inside him, something small but real. You slept? She said gently. He nodded, rubbing the back of his neck. Yeah, I think I did. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. Linda made breakfast, simple things he used to love: eggs, toast, warm potatoes. Andrew sat at the table slowly, like someone learning how to move again. He ate quietly at first, then faster, as if he hadn't tasted something homemade in far too long. After breakfast, they sat near the window where the sun warmed the room. Andrew looked outside at the snow-covered yard, his eyes distant but calmer than before. It feels strange, he said. Being home after everything, she nodded. It takes time. He leaned back, folding his arms across his chest. I thought coming home would fix everything, he said. But the memories followed me. She didn't speak. She knew he wasn't finished. I saw people change, he continued. I saw myself change too. He tapped his fingers restlessly on the table. I didn't want to bring all of that here, but I didn't know where else to go. Linda reached across and placed her hand over his. You came to the right place, she said. This is your home. He looked at her long and deep, as if those words cracked something open inside him, something he had been holding together with quiet fear. There was a long pause before he whispered, I'm scared, Mom. Linda felt her breath catch. Of what? She asked gently. He swallowed hard. Of who I'm becoming. The room grew still. He looked down, gripping his hands tightly. There's anger I can't control sometimes, he said. And sadness that hits me out of nowhere. He shook his head slowly. I feel guilty for being here when others didn't make it back. His voice trembled, and Linda moved closer, placing her hand on his shoulder. That guilt is not yours to carry alone, she said softly. He closed his eyes. They were my friends, he said. And now, every happy moment feels wrong, like I don't deserve it. Linda took a slow breath. You deserve peace, Andrew, she said firmly. You deserve to heal, to live, to smile again. He looked at her with tired eyes. How? He asked. How do I heal from things I can't even talk about without shaking? She squeezed his shoulder. One piece at a time. He leaned his head back against the couch and stared at the ceiling. I don't want to spend my life afraid of my own mind. You won't, she said. Not if you let yourself get help. He lowered his head and looked at her. What kind of help? The kind that understands soldiers, she said. The kind that helps you rebuild, not erase. He rubbed his hands together nervously. I always thought asking for help made me weak, she shook her head. Strength isn't never breaking, she said. It's knowing when you can't carry the weight alone. For a long moment Andrew didn't speak, then he finally nodded. Maybe I should talk to someone at the base. Quiet relief filled her chest. That's a good step, she said, but she could see there was still something unspoken, a shadow behind his eyes, a story he hadn't let himself share. He stood up and walked toward the window, staring out at the quiet world beyond the glass. When I was over there, he said slowly, there were days I didn't think I would make it. He ran his hand down his face. There were nights I didn't want to. Linda froze, her breath tightening. Andrew. He turned around, his expression raw. I felt empty, he said. Completely empty, like nothing mattered anymore. She stepped closer, her eyes full of worry and love. You came home, she whispered. That means something inside you still wanted to live. He shook his head. I don't know, he said. Maybe I came home because I didn't know what else to do. Linda placed both hands on his shoulders, firm but gentle. You came home because you needed healing, she said. And because part of you knew you could find it. Here. His jaw tightened. I don't want you to think I'm fragile, he said, or broken. She shook her head quickly. You're not broken, she said. You're wounded and wounds heal. He let out a shaky breath. I'm tired of pretending everything is fine. You don't have to pretend here, she whispered. Andrew closed his eyes. You still see me as your son, he said quietly. Even when I don't feel like myself. She pulled him gently into her arms. And I always will, she whispered. No matter what you've seen, no matter what you've carried, nothing changes that. He let himself lean into her embrace, his breathing uneven but calmer than before. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The house felt warm, the kind of warmth that didn't come from the fireplace but from presence, from understanding, from quiet love. When they sat down again, Andrew looked lighter, not healed, but beginning to soften around the edges where the pain had been the sharpest. I'll talk to someone at the base, he said. I'll try, Linda smiled. That's all I ask, he nodded. And thank you, he added quietly, for listening, for not judging me, for just being here. You don't have to thank me, she said. That's what family is for. He looked down at his hands. When I said you fulfilled my desires, he said slowly, I meant you gave me something I lost. What did I give you? She asked softly. Home, he whispered. A place where I could breathe again. Tears gathered in Linda's eyes. That will always be here for you, she said. They spent the rest of the day talking about things that didn't hurt. Small memories, favorite meals, dreams he once had. Every story he told seemed to loosen another knot inside him. Every laugh, even the small ones, felt like a step toward healing. As evening settled, Andrew looked calmer, more grounded, his eyes brighter than they had been since he arrived. You think I'll get better? He asked softly. I know you will, she said. Because you're brave enough to try. He nodded slowly. I think maybe I'm going to be okay. The snow outside continued to fall, but inside the house warmth grew, not from the fire but from the courage to face the truth and the strength to share it. Healing didn't happen in a single moment, but that night, in that quiet Montana home, it began, and it began with honesty, love, and the simple promise that no one heals alone.